Okay, welcome back to part 2 of how I play that. We're looking mainly at Psychic Ritual, but now we're expanding to how I would use, maybe the rest of the army to go along with the central tactic that I just showed in the previous video. So right off the bat, we're going to just do the same thing we did before. We're going to move these guys. Same as before, guys. The back of the board, the top of the screen to you is the back of the table edge, so 24 inches to the centre on a 6x4 table. We're going to move this 10 inches in because it's the same thing we did in the last video. So these guys are up here. Their job is obviously to do the Psychic Ritual with the Demon Prince, and we take the Demon Prince. Now in the last video, that's what I showed you. So I wanted to get more into what I would actually do with the rest of my army at this point, because it's obviously quite an exposed little blob there. Now there's a lot of different ways to run the Death Guard. Personally, I've always been a fan of just overwhelming force moving up into the centre with as many Plague Marines and things as I can fit in. You often see other people playing where they have a whole army, and out of the whole army they've got like one squad or maybe two squads of 7, Plague Marines, and for me it's just not good enough. They never really do anything. I really like to just overcommit to the Plague Marines and or Demon Engines, Terminators, whatever. In this case, we're going to be setting up a nice battle line of Plague Marines because it's what I think is going to be quite effective, despite the fact that I haven't had too many games to get out and play yet. So this was turn 1. Now turn 1 at the same time, they weren't there in the last video, but this time I've got Rhinos. So turn 1, we're going to move up these Rhinos. Now it's up to you how you like to deploy things. You could move the Rhinos the full 12 inches forwards. What I like to do is make sure that I'm turned at the end like this. It's not important, but you can do it if you want to. And then you can disembark behind them next turn. Or if you'd prefer, you could move them not quite as far, something like this. And then have your Plague Marines out in front of them. For my purposes today, I'm going to move my Rhinos kind of like this. They're full 12 inches. Or near enough, maybe just 10 or so. I want them nearby, but I don't want them to crowd the area too much. This one's just going to turn up like this. That's good enough for me. And now it's going to be dubious weathering turn 1. Obviously, for the sake of this table, I've just gone for a flat table. Hopefully, on your table, you'll have some kind of terrain. I do find that generally you can do a pretty good job of hiding Rhinos behind most terrain, whether it's rocks or buildings or ruins or something. For the most part, Rhinos are fairly good at being hidden in terrain, and that's what I would try to do, preferably. But for the sake of this little show, it's just a flat board, so there's nothing I can do about it. The point is, we're setting up for next turn. Now, if you were worried about the central unit, you could, of course, use the Rhinos to be more cagey, because they can move 12 inches plus D6 advance. If you really wanted to, you could properly zoom these Rhinos, a really long way, and have them end up, something like this, just to really make sure that your units were protected. But personally, I'm just going to go at this for the sake of the video, because the point is, to follow up on my last video, what happens once you've rushed the centre of the board with this. This little blob alone is obviously not going to hold up against the rest of your opponent's army. So that's what this video is about. You've seen the blob in the first video. Now it's how do you support this blob through the next 3 turns, because you need this here for at least 3 turns. Now what I would do in each of these Rhinos, I would have 9 Plague Marines with a support character. For the purposes of today, we're going to assume it is a Tallyman, the Foul Blight Spawn, and the Biologist Putrefier. Now, of course, a lot of people like the Plague Surgeon. I don't rate the Plague Surgeon personally. I'm never a fan of fishing for those 6s. I don't think that you make enough of them for it to really be worth it. And ultimately, well, he stood there providing a 6+ for no pain aura that nobody makes. He doesn't do anything else. All of these other characters, they do something all the time. It's not just they're actually going to be useful all the time, not just if you maybe make some 6-ups. Now, I'm also a fan of this guy, Noxious Blightbringer, but I'm not going to use him today. So we're going to say the Tallyman is in this Rhino here, the Biologist Putrefier is in this Rhino here, and the Foul Blight Spawn is in this Rhino here. You could put them all. You could put all 3 in this Rhino at the back here if you wanted to. Have 10 Plague Marines in each of these front 2 squads, and just 7 in the back with your 3 characters. It doesn't really matter. That's up to you. The point is, at turn 2, hopefully, like I said, the main point of this is to survive turn 1. So hopefully it survived turn 1, even if you're just down to this or something, or or even just a Demon Prince by this point. But hopefully you'll still have a couple of these here. The point now is that you get everybody out, and I'm going to have to apologise for my lack of painting, because I've got a lot of projects to be getting on with, and unfortunately not everything can be painted. So we're going to get our Plague Marines out here. I'm going to just assume that I've still got some Blight Haulers there. I don't want to remove them and then maybe confuse things. And obviously at this point I'm just taking the 3-inch disembark and their 5-inch movement all together, because, just for the sake of the video, we're going to do it that simply. Just Plague Marines everywhere because they're really good. Now, the reason that you might want to put all 3 characters in the back Rhino is obviously because at this point you can still likely try to make sure that they're all within 6 inches of other units. The Biological Putrefier in this case has got this unit and this unit. The Foul Blightspawn's got this unit and this unit. The Taliban should have both of them. But if you wanted to have them both, get out of this unit, you could obviously make it so that they reached all 3 of them with your deployment. So that, it depends whether you want 3 units of 9 or 1 unit of 7 and 2 units of 10. It doesn't really matter for this demonstration. But the point is, and also if you wanted to spread out more, obviously again there should be terrain on the board. It might well be that this squad is in a house, a building, ruined somewhere, or this squad's in a wood or behind a rock. It doesn't matter, but for the purpose of this, it's just a flat open board. And you could spread them out more if you wanted to, if you wanted to deploy the Rhinos differently, so that they can spread out more this way and cover more board. It depends where the objectives are and what other units you have on the board to deal with the objectives. Personally, I would probably have a number of other vehicles and demon engines around, or maybe some other smaller units of Plague Marines that I can put around on objectives, maybe even some Poxwalkers. But for the most part, we're just talking about really committing to the middle here. And this, these units, they can spread out a fair way. They can spread out as far as they want to and claim their own objectives. We're just focusing on this, not worrying about objectives too much right now, but you can definitely still hold plenty of objectives. And then what we've got here, let's assume these have been killed. Actually, let's assume these have been killed, and you've got your Demon Prince. He's still doing Psychic Ritual. You've had your squads get out. This squad's protecting him this way. This squad's protecting him this way, and it's just a huge battle line now of Plague Marines. That's what I like to do personally. And again, that's the point of this series. I'm showing you how I will play my games, how I have played them, and how I think that it's good to play them. This is not an advertisement for, what's going to win you a tournament. This is how I play. And what you've got now is you've got a massive, massive firebase of Plague Marines. They're going to completely hold the centre of the board. There's not many things that are going to be able to take the centre of the board from you, I would say, at this point. You just need to work out how you're going to cover the rest of the table with other available units. In a 2,000 point game, you will have more points spare than this, although the Plague Marines are a significant chunk. Now, the reason you've got these supporting characters is for a few reasons. The Taliban, as you know, you can choose a unit, give it +1 to hit. I've got this unit here with the 2 Blight launchers in it. I'd probably put it on the unit with the 2 Blight launchers in it personally. You'd also, most likely in this situation, you already have 1 relic on the Demon Prince, the Ironclad Furnace. In this case, you would probably also, or I would also probably spend another CP to give my Tallyman the Tollkeeper relic, because the Tollkeeper is going to give you additional hits on unmodified rolls of 6. So this enormous firebase of Plague Marines that are going to be shooting their bolters, double tapping their bolters, rapid fire, at full 24-inch range, I think it is now, even better than 18. So that you've got a massive blob of rapid fire bolters here. They're all going to be getting extra hits on 6s. I would also have Sigils of Decay, because 6s to hit will also then be an automatic wound. That's just a that's a great force multiplier. So the Tallyman is really useful in this situation. He's going to really buff this line. Then you've got your Foul Blightspawn. What I would do is I would spend, in this case, actually a 3rd command point. I think it would be worth spending a 3rd command point to give him the Revolting Stench Vats, which is a 6-inch aura, and anything that charges and ends up within the 6-inch aura loses all charge bonuses. They don't fight first, and they lose all other charge bonuses. So it's also worth keeping in mind that anything like +1 attack from World Eaters, they'd lose that. +1 to hit from Space Wolves, they'd lose that. +1 to wound from Blood Angels, they'd lose that. +1 attack from Shock Assault, they'd lose that. In addition to also going second, because the wording is now specifically that you cannot make use of any rules that allow it to fight first, and never counts as having made the charge move. So if it doesn't count as having made the charge move, it won't benefit from any of those rules. Now obviously again, he's over here. It's not a good position right now for the video, but if I was doing this in game, I'd make sure that he was actually probably, you know, up here somewhere near the front. I'd really get him out his full distance, the 3 inches plus his 5 inches, to make sure he's at the front here. And then hopefully if you've got incoming units, whether that's Orcs or Tyrannos or Blood Angels or whatever, you know, most likely if anything charges you, it's going to be within 6 inches. Now it's not important that he benefits from any of the other rules, so if you wanted to, you could have him from a second detachment and actually have him from the Ferryman detachment, and then if you want to, you can spend the CP on droning wings, and it's going to increase his 6-inch aura ability by another 6 inches. So in this case, his 6-inch revolting stench vats relic will be 12 inches, and that will give him a massive zone of coverage. You know, anything that charges you, you're going to be striking first, hopefully, because it will lose its charge ability to strike first and lose any charge bonuses. This is a horrific blob of Plague Marines at this point. You know, they're really good in combat. That's partly why we've got the Biologist Putrefier here. He's going to buff their Blight Grenades, obviously, if you are stuck in combat and you use something like, what's it called now? It's not Blight Bombardment anymore. The Blightening, you know, that's going to affect their Blight Grenades, and that's going to be really useful for playing the defensive against an army that's charging you. But also he's here because he now has essentially Blaze of Putrefaction built into him. He gives you mortal wounds on 6s to wound in close combat. So all of these nice Plague Knives, they're already really nice at AP-1, they're now doing mortal wounds on 6s in close combat, and again, you make sure he's within 6 inches of everybody, or at least 2 squads. It's absolutely brutal. The Plague Marines have got their own stratagems. You've got Trench Fighters for +1 attack with each Plague Knife. You've got Creeping Blight for AP-4, for AP-4 on wound rolls of 6. It's horrific. This many Plague Marines, with this many buffs all stacked onto it, it's going to be really horrible. And I would be very surprised if you didn't just, you know, pretty much guarantee your 15 victory points for Psychic Awakening, and most likely got a couple more objectives, because there's probably an objective over here, isn't there, somewhere? There's probably an objective down there. It's probably an objective over there or something. You know, you can spread out and get this objective that's over there. You can have a Rhino go off and get this one. Doesn't matter. There's going to be more objectives than just this central one that you're focusing on for the Demon Prince. So it's not going to be too bad, and you can, you know, you spread out more than I have done here. I think that you start it off turn 1 with the Mephitic Blight Haulers. You give yourself time to get the Plague Marine Horde up here. You have your supporting characters to make sure that they're just as nasty as possible, absolutely horrific. I can't wait to start using things like this. I've got friends that play Orcs and Space Marines, and I think this is going to be great against any of them. I'm really looking forward to it. It's just, you know, this many Plague Marines, this many buffs all stacked on. It's absolutely horrific. And if you want, again, like I also heard you can have another Demon Prince coming in to buff things. You can have another Malignant Plague Caster coming to buff things if you want more powers and things. You can always have more of them. I'm a huge fan of these bloat drones. If you deployed the bloat drones, you know, towards the beginning, you brought them up around the side, something like this, or over here, had them just floating close by. They do have a stratagem now that allows them to heroically intervene 6 inches. So if you're able to get a couple of these Fleshmire bloat drones somewhere like this, you know, the moment anybody moves near you in the charge phase, you can just heroically intervene 6 inches into them and give them a good mowing, just to really distract them and keep them out of the way. These are really effective, these are really useful, and they're just good distractions anyway. You know, if people are thinking, oh, I need to get rid of the Demon Prince, if you had 2 or 3 of these just coming up the board, they got to shoot them, you know. And the last unit I'm going to introduce is the Plague Burst Crawler. I'm quite a fan of these guys. They're definitely, again, very good with the Poxmongers detachment. If you had, you know, maybe 1 or 2 or even 3 of these, they do a good job, I think, just cementing themselves in somewhere on the sides. you know, maybe following up behind the Rhinos, taking position. Again, you can fire them in close combat. You can use the Poxmonger stratagem to fire even the Mortar in close combat. You can enhance it with a stratagem of its own if you want to. It's going to be absolutely brutal. I have used Blade Burst Crawlers in conjunction with the Demon Prince and Psychic Ritual before, and they have pretty much sat either side of him. They're really nasty to get rid of. So that's a good one. And personally, in terms of the rest of my army, I would probably have 3 Predators like this, just 3 quad las Predators. And this would be my back of the board fire support. This would be my heavy guns to sit at the back of the board while this big sort of battle line fire platform of Plague Marines, which are good for, you know, mass bolter fire and really horrific close combat ability. They can just take the centre of the board, even push forwards if they want to into enemy territory, and you've got your nice heavy guns to blast their tanks and monsters and things like that. This is what I would do, this is what I do. This is something I'm going to be looking forward to getting back to doing again. I think that it's really potent. I think, now you might be thinking, oh, you know, why are you putting so much fuss on, you know, the Psychic Awakening, Psychic Ritual? Well, I just think that it's a good solid way of getting 15 points. Comparatively easier to most of the other objectives where, you know, you'll probably just get to 8 or 10 or something, you know, maybe 12. For me, it's a really good one to go for. And it's also one that if you know what you're doing, you can pretty much, you can deny it to your opponent fairly easily. You know, if imagine if you were playing like a Space Marine army and they wanted to get their Librarian, you know, within 6 inches of this, or you're playing Orcs and they wanted to get a Weird Boy within 6 inches, there'd be no chance. Because first, the Demon Prince himself is still allowed to fight in combat. He has to cast a ritual in the Psychic phase. He can still fight in combat, so he can smack away anything that tries to get too close himself. He can heroically intervene 3 inches, smack away anything that gets too close, just himself personally. And then you've got, you know, the rest of your forces. It's really tough for anybody to get this. Once you've really dedicated to it like this. And again, you know, this isn't necessarily your full army at 2,000 points. You've still got a good number of points left to really make sure that you're focusing on other objectives, using other units, the Predators, Demon Engines, whatever, to make sure, you know, whether you've chosen to rack up kill points or just you're using the ones from the book, so you want to just corrupt objectives, or, you know, stay alive, spread out on the board, or you've taken things like Bring It Down. I like Bring It Down normally, getting 2 or 3 points of victory points for every, you know, vehicle that you kill. It's really effective most of the time. It's a good one, and it's a passive one that you can just pick up as the battle goes on. You know, you kill more and more stuff naturally, so it just kind of works out for itself. You don't have to think about it. I like to just take one objective that I can really think about, and then a couple others that are a bit more passive, that don't matter so much, and they just rack up themselves as the game goes along. I think this video's gone on long enough, and I'm sure that if people think this is trash, you've already made up their decision. So I'm going to end the video there. And, you know, thank you for watching. If you did, please leave your own thoughts in the comments. How do you run Death Guard? This is how I run Death Guard sometimes, not exclusively, of course. I've got many other lists, but this is, you know, a way that I think is quite good and effective for me. You know, how do you run Death Guard? Let me know in the comments, and hopefully I'll see you for another how I play this video. Thank you.